Hello, I'm here to show you my process for making 3 loaves of sourdough bread using my friend Margaret's sourdough bread recipe that she gave me about a year ago. She gave me a starter, and I have my starter in a jar like this. It's been in the refrigerator for several days, and last night or yesterday morning I took it out of the refrigerator and let the sourdough starter sort of acclimate to the room temperature, and then I fed it. It's like a pet. So this is how I fed the starter. I added a half a cup of sugar, 3 tablespoons of potato flakes, and 1 cup of warm water, and then shook it up really well and let it sit out for a few more hours. And when it gets really bubbly and frothy, I then make up my batch for the 3 loaves of bread. So I did that last night. I have 2 big baking bowls or mixing bowls that I use. So I added in one container, a smaller container, I put in my 1 cup of starter, a cup and a half of warm water, a 1/4 cup of sugar, and also I cheat a little bit. I did put in a packet of yeast because I like big, fluffy loaves of bread. So technically my bread is a sourdough flavored yeast bread, but you can still do it without the yeast. But for my kitchen and in our house, it doesn't rise quite as much as putting that little extra oomph in there, a packet of yeast. So I mixed all those together, and now I'm getting ready to, it's been sitting in the oven in the large baking bowl, rising overnight. So I'm getting ready to prepare my kneading surface for the bread by putting some flour, spreading some flour, and I like to use King Arthur flour. It is high in protein. It's really good flour. I use the unbleached bread flour and the whole wheat flour. I make a mixture of, it varies a little bit, about 4 cups of the bread flour and 2 cups of the whole wheat flour to make my big batch. Last night I think I used 3.5 cups of the bread flour and 2.5 cups of the whole wheat flour because I wanted a little extra whole wheat this time. Anyway, so I'm getting my surface ready to knead the dough, and I also use a rolling pin to roll it out, and I'm going to get that all sprinkled with flour. And I'm going to go over here to the oven and get out my big batch of risen bread dough. Okay, I'm getting ready to open up the oven and see how much my bread dough has risen in the oven. The oven, of course, has not been on, but it's a nice warm place for bread to rise. And I see that it has risen quite a bit. It's coming out the top. So I'm getting ready to take it over to my kneading surface, and we're going to dump it out, and I'll show you what I do next. Okay, as you can see, it rose quite a bit in the oven. I'm throwing it out on my floured surface. And by the way, I didn't show all these little details, but I usually wash my kneading surface about 3 times and wipe it dry with a paper towel before I get it ready for the bread. Anyway, I've got a big batch here of bread dough, and it will make 3 loaves. So I pulled it out of the oven, and I want to let it rest for about 15 minutes. So I'm going to first divide it into 3 hopefully equal loaves. It seems like my center blob is usually more than my end ones. So trying to make this even. So that's about even. I'm going to rest it for a few minutes. Let it rest. Okay. So while I'm letting my bread dough rest, I am getting my pans prepared for the loaves to bake. I like to use cast iron loaf pans because it has a nice sort of crispy outside when you bake it, so that's just my preference. And some people say that you get a little extra iron if you use cast iron. I don't know how much of that is true, but hey, it won't hurt. So I put some shortening in there, and I'm going to spread it around evenly and coat the inside of the cast iron pans, getting them ready to receive the loaf. So I have greased my cast iron pans. 3 loaves are going to be sitting in there pretty soon, wiping my hands off. I like to, especially in the wintertime when this kitchen is pretty cold, I like to turn on the oven to 200 degrees and let it heat up a little bit for a few minutes just to warm the oven, because when I put my loaves in, I want that rise to be fast enough that maybe I could bake bread this evening rather than have to wait, too much longer. Maybe I'm impatient, I guess, but anyway, I'm warming up the oven a little bit, 200 degrees, so the bread will rise a little bit faster. And I usually open the oven a little bit at first because you get some condensation. And since I'm using cast iron, I don't want my pans to rust or be exposed to condensation for too long. So I'm going to do that for a few minutes and then turn it off, let it cool down a hair before I put my loaves in. So now we're going to go back over here. It's almost been 15 minutes, so we're going to go back over here and knead the dough. Okay, my 3 loaves have rested for 15 minutes, and I'm going to knead my 3 loaves, about 5 minutes for each loaf. So I'm going to need a little more flour here. I've washed my hands about 1,000,000 times, so in case you're wondering, I didn't do a video of that because it's kind of, everybody knows how to do that, right? Anyway, so I'm taking my loaves and I'm going to first set my timer. This is one thing that I do like about Siri. Hey Siri, set timer for 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes and counting.
Isn't that great? So when it's over, I set mine to have a barking sound at the end. In 5 minutes, there will be barking. So I'm just kneading it, squishing, squishing, squishing. Depending on your mood, you might want to do some pounds and slaps. But it's very therapeutic. I'm sure you don't want to watch this for 5 minutes, so we'll give you a break from that. Now, I guess you can do this bread making process without dogs, but I recommend doing the bread making process with dogs, because if you drop anything on the floor, bread dough or flour or whatever, they are sure to find it. They really don't like it when I cook very much because I don't drop a whole lot on the floor. But they're hopeful. Right, Bella? Right, Peony? There's my timer. Hey Siri, stop timer.
Okay, it stopped.
All right, so it's been 5 minutes of kneading, and this is my technique. You don't have to do it this way. You can figure out your own way. You could just put it in the loaf, plop it in the pan like that if you want to. I like to roll mine out. Put a little bit of luck in there, since I'm sure my mother gave me this roller. So I roll it out and I roll it up. Sort of pinch it, pinch the ends, and there's my loaf. So I'm going to set it aside and then start on the next loaf, kneading the next loaf. Hey Siri, set timer for 5 minutes.
Okay, your timer is set for 5 minutes.
And if you're really good, you can knead both at the same time, 2 at the same time, 1 in each hand. Okay, I'm putting the third loaf in the pan. They've been kneaded and rolled out and rolled up. Putting them in the pans, and now I'm putting them in the oven because that's the warmest spot. And I warmed it up even more a while ago to 200 degrees. And you need to cover it to let it rise. So I'm covering it, this pretty cloth. To let it rise. Putting it back in here. And in a few hours, it will have risen enough for me to bake it. So, something to look forward to. Okay, it's been about 5 hours since I put the loaves in the heated oven. And just remember, when you heat the oven up to 200 degrees to let your dough rise, you do turn the oven off before you put your bread in there. You're not baking it, you're just warming up the oven so it'll rise faster. Of course, it's been about 5 hours. If I were doing strictly sourdough recipe, it would take about 8 to 12 hours to rise. But since I cheat and I use 1 packet of the yeast, it doesn't take quite as long to rise. So, pull out my loaves, see what I've got, and whoo, aren't they pretty? Those are almost sitting too close together. Anyway, so I'm taking them out of the oven, and I'm preheating my oven to 360 degrees. It's important that you know your oven. The recipe that Margaret gave me says 350 degrees, and I know that my oven is off by a few degrees, so I'm going to put mine at 360. And I'm going to bake mine. I've figured out the perfect amount of time, and for me and my oven, it's 33 minutes at 360 degrees in my cast iron loaf pan. So we're getting there. It's heating up, and I'm going to be putting them back in the oven soon, and in about 40 minutes or so we will have some fresh baked sourdough flavored yeast bread. Alright, I took these out of the oven about 10 minutes ago and let them sit in the pan for 10 minutes. And of course they fall right out of the cast iron pan. But I've got 3 beautiful loaves of bread, and I will be giving some of this bread away, so I don't keep all the bread. I share it with others. Always a good idea to share. My mother taught me that. She taught me a little bit about bread baking too. Anyway, try this at home. Definitely try this at home.